Good morning. Today we'll start a new poem by Robert Frost, that is Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening is one of the most mystifying poems and is Robert Frost's well-known classic that has become a mainstay in English classes throughout the US and beyond. It was first published in 1923 and it quickly became a popular poem to commit to memory and recite due to its short length and mysteriously impactful content. Though many readers know all of the poems by heart, its interpretation isn't quite as straightforward. So, if we come or try to speculate about the poem's meaning, it would be readers wonder whether the poem has somewhat dark or albeit beautiful, and many assume it has something to do with death. When asked if the poem had anything to do with death or suicide, Frost denied it, preferring to keep everyone guessing by simply saying no. So many scholars still think, however, that the poem could be construed as a dream-like tale of someone passing away or saying a final goodbye. In many ways, it's a poem that trusts the reader. The words, sounds, and images appeal to all, from those who regard it as no more than a serene winter scene featuring snowy woods, a horse, and a rider, to those who feel a morose shudder when they read the final two lines. It is this ambiguity that makes the poem a classic and keeps it relevant so many years after its publication. The narrative sets up a subtle tension between the timeless attraction of the lovely woods and the pressing obligations of the present moment. So, when we try to know what is the theme of or what are the themes that relate to the poem, so we can say that the prominent themes that can be seen while reading the poem are: first is isolation, then is duty, and of course nature. In poetry, the themes are the major ideas that are explored by the author through a poem's characters, setting and plot. Therefore, themes are often abstract concepts like coming of age, pessimism, or immortality. The major themes of isolation, duty, or responsibility, and the tranquility of nature in Stopping by Woods provide additional avenues through which its meaning can be understood or analyzed. So, first we'll try to discuss isolation. The poem's narrator seems to find comfort in their own isolation. The first three stanzas focus heavily on the fact that they are alone, with the exception of the horse, of course, and unnoticed as they stop in the dark wood. Lines like, "He will not see me stopping here, to stop without a farmhouse near, and the only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake," repeatedly remind us that the events of the poem take place far from any group or observer. The narrator enjoys the solitude of their journey and ponders briefly about abandoning their course in favor of remaining isolated and appreciating their earthly surroundings under the cover of night. Then there is duty or responsibility. Duty and responsibility are also an important theme in the poem. Despite the peace and comfort the narrator seems to feel while alone in the dark woods, they have promises to keep. Means that there are some promises that prevent him from continuing to indulge in the serenity of their nocturnal isolation. The rider is on their way to some destination and he is going to carry out some prearranged purpose or duty, and while the peaceful woods tempt them to stay, their duty compels them to continue. Then there is also the theme of the tranquility of nature. While the poem alludes to society, for example, the lines, "His house is in the village though," it takes place entirely in the natural world between the woods and the frozen lake. While in the end, the narrator's societal obligations compel them to continue on their journey, their short lived respite in the lovely, dark, and deep wood seems to be the poem's primary focus. So, these are the themes and the poetic devices that the poet uses can help us to analyze the poem. So, the Stopping by Woods incorporates a number of well known literary and poetic devices that can help in the analysis of the poem. He uses the iambic tetrameter for his poem, and then rhyme scheme is A, B, A, B, B, C, B. So all of the poem's rhymes are full, meaning that a rhymed word stressed vowel, and all of the sounds that follow it are identical to those of the word it is rhymed with. Repetition is also other thing that the poet has used. The repetition is used in only the poem's final two lines. While repetition can serve any number of purposes in the poetry, it is often assumed that repeated lines are important and deserve special consideration. Means the poet wants to highlight these words, or he wants to make a stress or to show the importance of those words or those lines. So he uses repetition for that purpose. So after an initial introduction, we'll like to start the poem. Whose woods are these are I think I know. His house is in the village though, he will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. So the first lines with the starting of the poem with a possessive pronoun, but Frost manages it to make it work for him. It immediately grabs the reader's attention. It's as if the speaker or the narrator is sitting close by, thinking out loud or perhaps whispering to someone. Their initial thought isn't crystal clear, but as they only think they know who owns the woods. This is the first uncertainty that is introduced in the poem. The narrator makes this statement to reassure as they come to a stop to break their nighttime journey. There is gentle and slightly mysterious atmosphere created by the second, third, and fourth lines, which suggest that the owner of the woods lives elsewhere, is separate, and won't see the trespassing narrator observing his woods. His house is in the village though. He says that though he may be living in the village, but he is not able to see us. It's as if there's something clandestine going on, means something that cannot be seen. Yet somehow the image presented to the reader is as innocent as a scene on a Christmas card. The steadiness of the rhythm in each line suggests that there is nothing odd about what is going on. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. The second stanza concentrates on the horse's reaction to the rider's stopping in the woods. So, the poetic device which the poet is using is enjambment, in which one line runs into another without a loss of sense is employed throughout. In effect, this is one long sentence whose syntax is unbroken by punctuation. So the language is simple, yet its meaning can be interpreted in multiple ways. Queer, queer word is that means odd or strange, and the implication is that the narrator doesn't ordinarily stop to admire the view. He only stops at the farmhouses to feed and water the horse. So because he has stopped, the horse must be thinking that why he has stopped in at a place where there are no farmhouses. So what is the reason why he has stopped tonight? The darkest evening of the year may suggest that it's some time in the December, maybe 21st of December, that is the winter solstice and the longest night of the year. So we know from the snow and cold that it is definitely winter, but darkest could also be referring to the narrator's emotional state or perception of the undisclosed task at hand. So the rider sits on the horse in what appears to be a dark, cold, and inhospitable countryside. The long vowels in this section seem to be reinforcing the doubts of the horse as to why its rider chooses to linger at such an uncanny moment. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. So he says that even the horse is trying to engage him. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. So the horse is also uncertain. It shakes his bells or its harness, reminding the rider that this whole business stopping by the woods is really disturbing. And what's the point stopping here? Because it's not normally what they do. This is an unfamiliar territory. It takes a creature like a horse, a symbol of intuition, noble grace, and sacrifice to focus the rider's mind on reality. So he wants to tell him that they ought to be moving ahead. There's something about the way the narrator is fixed on the woods that worries the horse, something apart from the cold and the dark. There is no logical, direct, or rational answer given to the horse. Instead, we are confronted with the narrator's beautifully rendered observation in the coming lines, where alliteration joins together in a kind of gentle, sound like dance. The woods are lovely, dark, and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. You must have heard these lines so often because they are oft quoted lines by Frost. The final stanza features the speaker again reaffirming the peace and haunting beauty of the snowing woods. Perhaps on another night they would have dismounted and strode into the trees and never to return, but the idyllic lure of nature and its ability to distract from the everyday are strong themes here. It is so tempting to simply withdraw into the deep silence of the woods and leave the responsibilities of the day behind. But the narrator, who is the rider, he is the contemplative master of the horse, is already committed to the duties of their ongoing life. So he can't just lie down there. Their loyalties forbid him from entering the dream world. As much as they would love to melt into the snowing scene before them, they cannot, at least not now, because they can't stay back. The final two lines reinforce the reality of the situation. It will be a long time before the narrator disengages with the conscious world. So, I hope you understand. Thank you.